Tapping in.
Are we live?
Miles Xavier. Last week on the 14th of May, mass shooting happened in Buffalo, New York, at a top store. Was an active shooter, a case of domestic terrorism, where we know that 10 folks were killed, uh, most of them people of color. What do you have on the story for us?
Um, I'm gonna keep it I'm gonna keep it real, bro. I don't really have a lot of notes. I don't really have a lot of, like bullet points that I really want to hit like on this one. It's really just acknowledging this moment, not letting it just pass, right? Like, I mean, when we have to let go of things, like we have to figure out ways to cope. But I think I'm just very anti being desensitized to this, right? So just with intention in this moment, using this show, this space that I appreciate you being a part of, that I appreciate everybody tuning into, just be like, yo, this happened, this hurts. Um, I'm confused, but I'm not confused. And I think, just rest in peace to the folks involved. And it's hard not to imagine yourself in that situation, imagine your loved ones in that situation. So just to be human about it, bro, I think is what I'm about with it.
It feels like we're getting exposed to so much happening constantly that it really is hard to care. It really, really is hard to care, and it's you almost feel guilty about it, um, because things just keep on popping up. So I'm glad you're able to bring us to a place where we can take a moment to be able to acknowledge that in fact it happened. The sad thing is that it was mostly old people that were killed, people 65 and up, so people's grandparents. That's what's so disturbing about this.
Yeah, man. Imagine just living your whole life, like just everything that you've been through, everything that you've overcome, right? Like, even if you wake up with aches and pains at an old age, like you still getting up into the grocery store, right? And to be in that situation where somebody come and take your life at that point, like that's cold blooded. Like that's hard to swallow, I think. And that's such a vulnerable position, bro. Like, I can't walk around and be on guard every time I'm trying to choose a cereal. I refuse to live my life like that. You know what I'm saying? I cannot be looking for choosing between almond milks and be on the lookout for an active shooter. Like, my brain cannot handle it. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the part where I am confused. Is I'm confused in terms of what do we do, bro? I don't think everybody should get a gun and be prepared for a situation like this to go down. But I'm not confused in the sense of I know that we need to do a better job of addressing not even people's mental health, but addressing the way that people are being when they're given signs that they're going to do something like this, bro. This man posted a whole manifesto. This man had a whole Instagram page, and I'm not saying like this conversation gets into censorship too, but it's also like we got to have a way of monitoring that and just and determining, all right, well, this person has said I'm going to go shoot some people, right? Like, we should maybe investigate this and look into this. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, it's a lot.
he did say that he wanted to shoot people, and he also had a situation at his high school where he said he wanted to shoot people, and then the police were called and all of that. So the tricky thing about monitoring is that it would have to infringe on it would have to have the government have its fingers deeper in how they view the way we utilize the internet. So it's that catch 22. It's like, how much anonymity do we want on how we use the internet, and how much do we want actual like um intervention in it? How much do we want monitoring of it? It's already being monitored right now, but it is difficult for them to be able to pinpoint these types of things. Apparently.
Apparently, yeah, yeah. And I can understand that, right? I think the fact that we're in a weird place, man. He live streamed this event and it had 12 viewers on Twitch, which to me, I can understand Twitch not being a blip on their radar, considering how many people are streaming at any given time, right? So it is really hard to hold them accountable. They actually got it down within 2 minutes, which I don't think is that bad. I think within 2 minutes to be able to pull that
That's
joint down,
impressive.
right? Like, but at the same time, we've even talked about on this show these social media platforms being aware, and like less I'm talking about monitoring individual behavior than being aware of patterns that they are um, amplifying, whether it's patterns within young women and the way that they see themselves and their body image, and companies like Meta knowing that it has a negative effect on women and girls, but not changing the algorithms to address that, to perpetuating certain types of radicalization, perpetuating certain types of specifically radicalization around actual acts of violence that are being discussed, right? And so you're absolutely right, bro. It's hard. It's a double-edged sword in terms of who do we monitor, how deeply do we monitor. But my take is that let's take a look at the patterns that the way we engage in social media pushes people into, and some of the effects of that, right? Like, and we can, maybe there's data that we can turn to further understand why some of these things are happening.
So there's a lot of data on why some of these things are happening. Social media is also a bit controversial in the sense that at least a lot of where these shooters become indoctrinated is on YouTube and on these off sites, on these off dark websites where they can get some of this information. The media's role, however, when we're talking about how the media covers school shootings, is one of the few things that shows a correlation in active shooting. So it's even hard for them to really determine if owning a gun. So gun ownership does not actually show a correlation with active shooters, which means that the more guns that people buy is not a it doesn't directly relate to how many active shootings are happening, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because that's always been the talk, right? Is that it's the gun permissiveness and gun ownership that's adding to it. That being said, see, it looks like you got a question.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there's a difference between the more people buy guns doesn't mean there are more active shooters, is different than if it's more difficult to get a gun in general, there wouldn't be less active shooters. I think those are two different kind of points.
So then that speaks on gun permissiveness, which is how easy it is for people to be able to get guns, and the data, which is and it's important to be able to put a caveat on it, which is that the data that they're trying to utilize is really looking to establish concrete correlations between an input and school and active shooting, breaking it down into different categories. Like there's a mass shooting specifically means the injury or death of four or more people. So in the US currently, there's about seven of those a day, essentially, that happen. So you kind of have to take a wider look at what's happening. So when we look at gun permissiveness, which is how easy it is to get a gun in a particular state, apparently that isn't a super strong. It doesn't have a conclusive correlation with the number of mass shootings that are happening on a daily basis.
I mean, it doesn't, right? Like, if you look at Europe, where if you look at like a city like London, where you can't have a gun, probably less mass shootings. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't have the data on that. I'm just gonna say it's probably less mass shootings where you can't have a gun. I'm just gonna, but I get it on a state by state basis, right? Like, because people we've seen, obviously, even in this case, people are willing to travel across state lines with their gun to commit these types of crimes, right? So I don't think on a state by state regulating whether, like, how tight the gun control laws stops somebody who's willing to go shoot up a school. but I think we can we can understand how what are the how are we regulating how you get a gun, which means if you are of a certain age, if you have a certain background, we should be able to look into your history, medical, mental health, otherwise, and understand why you want a gun. It shouldn't be that easy, right? Especially an automatic weapon. We're not talking about like a pistol, right? You know what I'm saying? Like we talking about body armor. My G, we talking about my man didn't go in there with a revolver. My man went in there like with stuff that I feel like it should be more difficult to get.
Even then, even then, right? Of all the mass shootings that happen, the majority of them that happen are with pistols. It's not even with these. But you're right in the sense that if this dude couldn't buy body armor, then civilians should not be able to purchase full blown
Yeah.
body armor.
And maybe the security guard then could have stopped him, right? But then there's a conversation about, right, like, and I'm glad you touched on this a little bit, where mass shooting means a lot of things. A shooting that includes any more than four people can be something that happens on the street over an altercation, or it can be something like this, which is an event where it's not between two armed parties. It's one party that's armed that specifically went to go kill bystanders, right? And so I think it's probably much more difficult to find data on that specific type of incident. I wonder why. I wonder why we're not investigating it like that. But I wonder because of who's doing it. But I think if we look at
You finished off your own question.
yes, I don't have the subtlety I want to have yet. But I just, you feel me? You feel me, dog? Like it's just like this is a very specific type of thing that's happening. This was very clearly racially motivated. He said it. He said, "Don't get it twisted. I'm doing this because they're black. I'm going after the black ones." And if you got it confused, there's a video of him in the stove where he points the gun at a white person and goes, "Sorry, my bad." It keeps
That
on
is
moving.
so disturbing. That's the most disturbing part of that of all that, right? But just to the racially motivated, this one is particularly racially motivated, and it's unfortunate. But the issue that we're looking at with mass shootings are the icing on top of the cake of really what's leading to all of this, and where the real numbers are, right? So if we talk now about felony related mass shootings, you see that 57.1% of those are done by black people, bro. So like if we're looking at I don't want us to judge this racially motivated mass shooting that killed 10 black people when a lot of mass shootings are happening in black communities that are being done by black folks and are ultimately taking the lives of other black folks, 57.1% of it, right? So but in all other areas it's a different type of statistic, but still.
I would say that there are systemic reasons for that 51%, and that violence is a result of the ways in which we've treated those communities, not invested in those communities, and strategically allowed and forced crime to only take place in those communities, or takes place specifically in those communities, while other types of crime that we ignore, right, takes place in other types of communities. So we can address systemic violence. We can address why certain communities have higher rates of gun violence than others, right? And why that violence is perpetrated by a very small group of people, and that have been particularly set aside by society. We address that in one way. I think somebody who takes a automatic weapon into a grocery store is a different conversation that needs to be addressed a different way. And I think sometimes it's frustrating when a white person does something that is that that is objectively horrible, and we somehow find a way to say, "Ooh, black people kill each other all the time." Okay, so do something about that. Help me. do something about that. We could address that, but at the same, but this is something completely different. We don't see black people running up in white neighborhoods and killing a whole bunch of people, innocent people in their grocery stores, and we damn sure don't see them walking out of it alive with the cops. Like, all right, man, you good? You're like, hey, watch your head as we get you into the seat. So there's a disparity there, and it is specifically racial. And
But
I think we need to talk about it for what it is, and not try and obscure it by saying like, well, black people do it too.
in in grief though, where there's room to be able to accommodate, thinking about other people that are also, grieving in the same way. So in the sense that, like, you're right, it shouldn't be an automatic invitation for that thought to be like, yeah, black people is killing too. It shouldn't be an automatic invitation for it, but I think it's definitely allowed in the space of grief when we look at black folks being killed, because it's the same type of thing at the end of the day. It's the same bodies. Really, it's black folks getting killed, black folks getting killed. It's not, you feel me?
I I do in a way, but I feel like we have built structures and institutions that like we have that conversation is being had, right? And I can understand the desire to connect to it. But I think the conversation that we failed to address is why this is happening, why white people are doing things, why white people keep shooting everybody that no people that didn't do nothing. You know what I mean? Like I can understand, I can look at the violence that takes place in black communities and understand that everybody is put at risk when somebody who is young and has a gun is willing to shoot up an entire house, an entire apartment complex, right? But I can understand that that's motivated by who lives there. There's a reason that they're into it with that group. There's a reason why they feel that territorial about their space. There's a reason why they're participating in an underground economy that they feel requires guns that they use as protection. Why they feel like why they feel like to have a gun and to be able to address violence that somebody else is threatening them with first is seen as prevention to them. I can understand all of that about why this takes place in our communities because we have researched it. We've over researched it. In fact, we've exposed these communities to so many pokes and prods and trying to understand why this happens. We just haven't done anything about it. We need to. There's a funding issue there. There's a there's an issue of investment and to really a real desire to change it there, which is I think is fundamentally different than the issue of why white people are willing to shoot up grocery stores. And I don't think we've exhausted our research ability there. I don't think we've exhausted the conversation there. I think because we haven't done anything about this other issue, we continue to not investigate and interrogate why we are so willing to just let this continue to happen when white people do it and not assign it to anything systemic and not investigate it, interrogate, or do anything about it.
So there is some research about it, but it is inclusive. It is inconclusive. One of the things that they know for a fact about the type of people that do this are people that have chronic frustration, and are they externalize blame, frustration and failure, commitment with diminishing ability to cope. So a diminishing ability to cope that stems from frustration and failure, and an externalization of blame is the biggest predisposing factor of the type of people that conduct these type of things.
And I'll be real, bro. I ain't a psychologist, psychiatrist. I I can't I don't know how to help those folks. And I will be the first person to say that I have dedicated damn near my life to one side of this issue and not the what's going on with these white mass shooters. But I think my frustration comes from like somebody get that side. Somebody do that over there. We doing this over here. We are trying. There are so many initiatives, people, ideas, ways of living and being and forming community that are trying to address this issue that I don't see being formed on the other side of it. And I hope that we can find a way to deal with that frustration. I suspect that in the racially motivated cases, it has a lot to do with a fear of being replaced, of not having anything that gives you status in society. Maybe that extends to beyond the racially motivated ones, right? I can try and empathize with that group of people, but I think where my heart lies is we can't ignore it, and we can't. I just yeah to just to bring it back to a human place. Like I want to know that that's being addressed, because that affects every single one of us. I have to. I have a grandmother that goes to the grocery store. I got you going to the grocery store, man. I know you got to eat. I know you got to eat. You know what I'm saying? So imagine getting that call, bro. Imagine getting that. You're not on the streets of Chicago. My brother's not on the streets of Chicago, right? Like that, and in an unfair way, maybe that's how my people feel about me all the time because I am here. But now maybe that's that coming back on me, is me feeling like I know y'all gonna be in a grocery store minding your own business at some point. You know what I mean? Somebody get that issue. You know what I'm saying? Or a concert, or at school. I'm gonna have kids. You know what I mean? I know they're gonna be there for sure. Somebody get that.
Hey man, you speaking to somebody that had a whole panic attack on a train thinking about a shooter that's going to be on there. Quite frankly, if I'm being honest with you, I love the U.S. Chicago is my second home. All my family and closest friends are all in the states. I'm invested in the U.S. in activism and business and in almost every facet you can count, right? But being there is quite difficult for my mental health because my anxiety in the US is higher than it is in most places
Word, word. I feel that. I feel that.
for
And
reasons like this.
yeah, word. I feel that. And all I can say, bro, is that we form in community, right? Community to me creates safety. Knowing the people around you, like looking out for each other on very basic levels. And yeah, so we're gonna continue to do that. We're gonna continue to build that. We having real conversations in this mug. You know what I'm saying? We really get into the heart of these issues, trying to make sense of all this nonsense that we see in the world. So we appreciate y'all rocking with us, man. And that's current news, man.